I attempted a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon HeartGold and SoulSilver, but with a slight twist. You know that little type effectiveness chart that's drilled into your head from childbirth? Let's scratch that, reverse it, and Nuzlocke both the Johto and Kanto regions with an inverted type chart. That means if a move is normally super effective, it is now not very effective, and vice versa. Will I be able to unwire my brain to be able to figure out a Nuzlocke such as this, or am I gonna make a boatload of mistakes just because of muscle memory? Well, let's find out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment down below with what other Pokemon games you'd like to see in an inverse setting. Let's begin. So the reason I chose HGSS for this challenge was just because I think it has the most difficult normal encounters to work with. Most of the Pokemon in the Johto region are just absolute garbage, so attempting to navigate through the game without being able to make good party choices seems like it could be quite the ride. Not to mention, it's a run where Chikorita is actually good, so that's a pretty big rarity, as the inverted type matchups now allow Chikorita to hit both Falkner and Bugsy's Pokemon for super effective damage, while being a very effective brick wall for their Pokemon. One errand to Mr. Pokemon later, and it's time to get our slew of encounters for before Falkner. This game hands you nearly a dozen different areas to get encounters from, which is super handy to ensure I have some diversity early on, not to mention plenty of Pokemon to diversify my EV training spreads without over-leveling Falkner's low cap of 13. But before I reveal my encounters, I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, BetterHelp Online Therapy. As we dive into this new year, it's got me thinking about where I want to go with my personal goals. Right now, I'm looking to shed the last of my excess pounds, going down to 170 from my current of 210. And I've got this itch to try something new with my videos, branching off into some, seriously researched historical content on Pokemon and other stuff. On top of that, I'm really focusing on strengthening my friendships as of late. I want them to feel deeper and substantial, you know? Less like going through the motions and more like real, genuine connections with people. And I've got to get better at handling my anger too. Finding healthier ways to deal with it instead of, yelling obscenities in the middle of the night while I'm working on a Pokemon challenge. But let's face it, figuring all of this out on your own can feel like wandering through a maze with a blindfold on. That's where BetterHelp Online Therapy comes in. BetterHelp is like having your own personal growth coach right there when you need them. They start making therapy a breeze, offering calls, video chats, or messaging, whatever floats your boat. And with over 30,000 therapists in their crew, you're bound to find someone who clicks with you. Plus, their questionnaire makes finding the right fit super easy. And most times, you're matched up within 48 hours. Pretty quick and sweet, huh? Setting up sessions? Easy peasy. And if you're not vibing with your therapist, don't sweat it. Just a quick click and you can switch things up without a hassle. So, if you're ready to take a step towards a happier, healthier you, why not join the 4 million folks who've already started their journey with BetterHelp? Click in the link in the description or head on over to betterhelp.com/ChaoticMeatball, and not only will you be helping support this channel as well as yourself, but you'll also snag 10% off of your first month with BetterHelp. So why wait? Take control of your personal growth today with BetterHelp. Alright, considering I already have Chikorita, which will be EV trained in defense and special defense, as I think it would make sense to keep this as a screen-setting status infliction machine with Poison Powder and Leech Seed, I'll need actual offensive pressure from here. After kicking Silver's bum pretty easily, I'm finally able to get Pokeballs and capture Hoot Hoot on Route 29, getting EVs in special attack and speed, Rattata on Route 46, training in attack and speed, Spinarak on Route 30, training in HP and attack, Bellsprout on Route 31, training in half attack, half special attack with full investment in speed, Geodude in Dark Cave, training in attack and defense, Unknown from the Ruins of Alph, containing Hidden Power Poison and training with special attack and speed, Wooper from Route 32, training in half HP and defense with full investment in attack, Mareep in Violet City thanks to a Primo Egg, training in special attack and speed, then last but certainly not least, Ghastly from Sprout Tower, training in special attack and speed. That is a whopping 10 Pokemon available before the first gym, so I've got quite the selection to work with. Of course, I want Pokemon with a type advantage against Falkner, and I decide on Bellsprout, Chikorita, and Spinarak for that, while also keeping around Wooper, Unknown, and Rattata on standby in case things get hairy, but I suspect we'll be just fine for now. Falkner leads off with his Pidgey, I lead with Rattata, and this goes perfectly for me, as Quick Attack instantly KOs Pidgey with a critical hit, leaving just Pidgeotto. Quick Attack's only doing about a quarter here, but with Gust doing about 10 damage, which is a little less than a third of Rattata's HP, and the second Quick Attack causing him to go for Roost, I figure I needed to try flinching him out with Bite before being forced to swap out. Though that doesn't even end up happening, as after the second Quick Attack hits, he just stops going for it, and I hit the statistical 1% chance of flinching twice in a row with Bite, following up with my own Quick Attack to KO and solo this fight with Rattata. Not much different from any fight that I would normally do in an HCSS Nuzlocke, but I'm sure I'll have to come up with some unique ideas for later fights. There's 0 important fights between gym leaders here, but there is a new encounter, with Stanshrew from Union Cave being trained in attack and defense. Theoretically, I could grab something from Route 33 and Slowpoke Well, but for now, I'm gonna wait until after I get Headbutt. After beating down Proton with exclusively Spinarak though, I'm feeling pretty confident going into Bugsy. After wiping out his gym trainers, Bugsy leads off with Scyther, myself with Unknown since we have the resistance to Bug, so I just start blasting HP Poison for 2 turns, nearly doing half damage as Scyther goes for 2 Leers. With that though, I feel like it's a little bit too much damage potentially coming my way, so I swap into Wooper as she goes for Focus Energy. But next turn, I'm quickly realizing that Wooper was the right choice as Mudshot brings Scyther into the red following a Quick Attack for a third. Not bad at all, but the second Quick Attack? That's critical, that's 1 HP, oh my god, but thank god, Mudshot does not miss despite it being 95% accurate, KOing Scyther through the previously used Citrus Berry to leave just the Cocoons. Cocoon is next, so I swap back into Unknown, one-shotting it with Hidden Power Poison, then two-shotting the last Pokemon Metapod to win the Hive Badge. Man, that 1 HP survival was pretty clutch by Wooper, but as viewers of this channel know by now, critical hits usually never impact my Pokemon. Only ranges on opposing Pokemon do, and damn are they the bane of my existence. Straight after is my second rival battle with Silver, or excuse me, what I named him, Pooh. His backstory is that he decided to travel over from Earthbound into a worse video game for some reason. He leads off with Ghastly, myself with Spinarak, and while he doesn't have many attacking moves that do it much at all, I'm able to just fumble here by using Nightshade instead of a physical attack that would kill this thing into the sun, which is either Poison Sting or Leech Life, but thankfully he only goes for Mean Look and Spite, neither of which damage Spinarak, as the second attack in Leech Life does KO, leading to Zubat. Now this thing, because of the inverse type matchups, it has a quad weakness to Bug, but it does manage to connect with Supersonic, which is very frustrating, but I do hit the Leech Life, which one-shots it and leaves just Quilava. He's outspeeding to no surprise with Leer, but Spinarak once again breaks through Confusion to hit a Leech Life for a quarter, doing the same next turn by snapping out of Confusion and hitting another Leech Life through a Smokescreen, though Spinarak does finally miss once a second Smokescreen is used. I'm not threatened at all by staying in though, so I just keep hammering at the Leech Life button, hitting a third after a third Smokescreen to bring Quilava to the brink of defeat, then managing to hit one more next turn following a Quick Attack to KO and win the fight single-handedly. Who knew that if you reverse the type chart, the early game bug types that are normally terrible become a lot better, even with poor stats? With Poodon though, it's encounter time again. Slowpoke Well has Zubat training in attack and speed, the Ilex Forest has Caterpie getting trained in special attack and speed, and after doing the Farfetch stuff, I can get access to Headbutt for even more encounters. Azalea Town provides Spearow via Headbutt, which thankfully now guarantees me Hoppip on Route 33 during the morning, and Cherry Grove City provides Execute. I almost made the mistake of going back to New Bark Town for a Headbutt encounter, initially grabbing Pineco, but then I remembered that my starter counts as my encounter here, so I just released it to make up for my mistake. Last but not least, with the Kimono Girl sent packing out of the forest, Route 34 provides Drowsy, my first effective psychic type of the run considering Unknown doesn't hit for anything but poison damage. But upon Drowsy's capture, I'm able to enter Goldenrod City and get buying baby! TMs are abundant in this area, and a lot of encounters can use the likes of Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Protect, Reflect, Light Screen, Focus Blast. Quite frankly, there's too many for me to mention that are very useful. But of course, this hinges on me being really good at Voltorb Flip. Thankfully, I'm really f***ing good at Voltorb Flip. Of course, some luck is involved, but when you're playing odds and using context clues for each card to make sure that you have the best statistical chances of winning, it does end up becoming the most enthralling part of HeartGold and SoulSilver, not even joking. If only I could buy more held items, Pokemon, which in this case I do end up buying Abra as my encounter for Goldenrod City, and TMs with this game, I'd probably have more of an excuse to play it, but, you know, Johto just loves half-baking everything. After all, I would have been okay with them completely not putting the Pokeathlon Dome in this game and just giving the different evolutionary stones as coin rewards here, but enough peddling gambling. I'll have time to do that in the future when I'm sponsored by DraftKings. From here, I decided to just finish EV training all of my Pokemon, evolving the likes of Abra, Chikorita, and Caterpie before taking on Whitney's gym, which isn't all too different thanks to her using the normal type. The only big difference I had to consider is getting someone that can resist rollout from Miltank, with Sandshrew and Butterfree being my best options. She leads with Clefairy, I lead with Sandshrew, and this is because it gets Sword Stance and Shadow Claw, 2 TMs available here in Goldenrod City. So I'm able to set up 3 Sword Stances, all while Clefairy wastes time with Metronome, rolling Stockpile, Triple Kick, and then using Mimic to seal Sword Stance before being outsped and KO'd with Facade, leaving just Miltank. I straight up think my brain blanked on this whole purpose of the challenge though, since I just start going for Facade on Miltank as well instead of the currently super effective Shadow Claw, barely missing the KO as Miltank of course gets off Attract, and holds Sandshrew down long enough to get damage in with the likes of Stomp. Though a single Facade did manage to bring her into Super Potion range, getting off one more to put Miltank into the red despite the Infatuation and flinch chances of Stomp. My best bet here is the quad resistance of Butterfree against Rollout, but a second Super Potion comes down on the swap, so instead I decided to swap into Bayleaf to hopefully status it to death. Though what I did manage to forget was that the thing has a Lumberry, and that's probably not going to work because, of course, Bayleaf is the opposite gender of Miltank and therefore is able to use Attract. I do get the first Poison Powder through, but then I'm stopped by a flinch, Infatuation, and a second flinch in sequence as Bayleaf is brought to red HP, forcing me to find a better option. Well, I guess it's back out to Butterfree, but Stomp does over half, so I guess there goes my rollout defense until she lots herself in later. Thankfully, I have a last-ditch idea, and that's swapping into Flaffy and hoping for a static trigger. After all, it's a 30% chance that the ability doesn't work according to every single goddamn time I've had static trigger against me in important fights, so it better fucking work here! And thankfully it does. Good stuff. Now all I have to do is not get crit, and 2 Thunderbolts should clean up from here, and sure enough, Stomp doesn't crit, we get the 2-shot, and get the win. Now, if only I didn't forget to just click on Shadow Claw, this fight would have been a lot safer, and I would have screamed a lot less obscenities that I said that I was going to stop doing in the sponsorship segment of this video, but again, we're still working on that. With 3 badges under my belt and plenty of encounters to already choose from, I suppose it wouldn't hurt if I went ahead and grabbed a few more, like Nidoran Female from Route 35, training in attack and defense, Pidgey from the National Park, also training in attack and speed, and finally, the guaranteed Sudowoodo on Route 36, training in attack and defense. Not too bad if I do say so myself, but with the upcoming East and West options coming up from Ecruteak City, there is way more to go after. Of course, Route 37 is just beforehand, so I could get myself a Growlithe, training in attack and speed, and finally giving me a fire type after 3 gyms. You'd think these are sparse in Sinnoh, but it's basically the same problem in Johto since they force all of the new ones into Kanto for some brain-dead reason, unless you've got the avid knowledge to go onto the internet and type your trainer ID in to get a subpar fire-type Slugma from Primo. I'd much rather get either Mareep or Wooper on Route 32 than get the other from Primo in my runs like it did here, but I digress. One Team Rocket Grunt holding Surf and a Kimono Girl hostage later, and we're good for another rival fight. This one's a lot easier than the last one considering most of my Pokemon have evolved by this point, such as my Sandslash leading off against his Ghastly, destroying it with a Facade following a Curse before Magnemite enters second. Once again, Normal is super effective, so Facade takes out Magnemite, taking Sandslash to half HP with the Curse, all while Quilava enters third. Oh hey, it's a modern Pokemon game where my starter is super effective against the rival's choice. That just means that despite his insistence on using Smokescreen exclusively, Magical Leaf bypasses those accuracy drops and lets Bayleaf 2-hit KO Quilava, leaving just Zubat to go down to the same attack due to its quad weakness to Grass, winning me the fight and giving me access to my new encounter here in Coughing, which is trained as a mixed attacker along with full investment in defense. Now, while we do have a good half dozen or so encounters I can go get now, I think I have plenty of effective counters to Morty to where I'd rather get the ability to use Surf outside of battle before grabbing all of those encounters. I mean, hell, the counter works so well that Raticate just outspeeds and one-shots Ghastly, Haunter, Gengar, and Haunter number 2 all with 1 headbutt apiece to win. Huh, who knew that Foresight was a good move when you don't have to waste a turn on setting it up? Now then, back to encounters. Route 38 is to the west of Ekritique, giving me... Entei. Well, what the f were the odds that this A shows up as my first encounter in the area, and B stays in the ball? Well, the answer to both is astronomically low, but only the first happens, therefore eating my encounter for the area. I'm telling you, I would have used Entei if it had been captured in a single ball there. I just wouldn't go out of my way to search for a legendary since they're usually banned in my runs. Stupid luck that I'm not sure if it's luck or a curse aside, Route 39 is just ahead, housing my next encounter in Magnemite, which seems good after EV training and special attack and speed, but there's no magnetic field in Johto to evolve it into Magnezone without trading it over to a Sinnoh game, which I'm not against doing considering I do have all trait evolutions at level 40 like Alakazam, Gengar, and Golem, but we'll see if I end up using this one. Just ahead is Olivine City, housing the Good Rod and therefore letting me fish up Magikarp. Good. About time I got one of these. As we saw in the last video that I put up on this channel, Gyarados is absolutely bonkers with the physical special split, and considering Stab Waterfall is super effective against Lance's 3 Dragonites in an inverse environment, I cannot complain whatsoever. One lighthouse later and it's back to encounters as Goldeen from fishing on Route 42, training in attack and speed, Machop from Mount Mortar, training in also attack and speed, Girafarig on Route 43, training in special attack and speed, Pineco from the Lake of Rage with Headbutt, training in defense and special defense, and of course, while I could use the shiny Gyarados as Shiny Claws and replace my current Magikarp, I feel like there's no need after she disgraced me by KOing my Growlithe with Dragon Rage after a frickin' missed range that would have KO'd the damn thing. Seriously, my first death is gonna be taken by a wild Pokemon, my one and only fire type I have currently, by the way, in the box, to just... ranges. The bane of my existence. Whatever, at least I can get an EXP share, throw it onto one of my situationally good Pokemon, and use the generically good ones a lot more than I was able to before. Also, in case you're wondering, no, I do not consider the Rocket Executives major fights. They're just ever so slightly souped up trainers with the evolutions to the same garbage Pokemon you run into 20 times during the rest of the area, and I don't feel like wasting more than 2 sentences talking about them. But with the Mahogany Rocket hideout taken out, it's easy enough to finally progress into our triple header of mid-game gym leaders. First up, Chuck leads off with Primeape, myself with Raticate, and we go toe-to-toe with our stat-boosting moves. Me with Swords Dance, him with Double Team, but even with 2 double teams up, he is unable to evade a +4 super effective Crunch, KOing in one shot and leaving Poliwrath to fall to the same fate next turn. Second, Pryce is a little bit of a harder nut to crack since the Ice type isn't exactly something I have good inverse weaknesses for, but I may as well just bring in my strongest assets, including my newly evolved Quagsire, as I had held Wooper until level 33 so that it would learn Earthquake by level up earlier than normal, giving me a wonderfully strong neutral move for this fight. Pryce leads with Seal, I lead with Crobat, and I figure just a neutral stab move is probably the play here, going for Wing Attack for slightly over half as he sets up Hail, which hilariously damages both of us, and Seal is not an Ice type just yet, allowing the second Wing Attack to easily clean up the KO, leading to Piloswine. Now, while I'd normally be weary about ground-type moves in this inverse run, thanks to the poison typing of Crobat, we're taking neutral damage from Mud Bomb here, so I'm able to stay in and dish out 2 Wing Attacks, doing around 2/3 as a Citrus Berry heals Piloswine to just under half HP, but doing enough damage with Mud Bomb to force me to swap into Ampharos, eating the Mud Bomb for breakfast and blasting it with the super effective Charge Beam to KO, leaving just Dugong. Despite not being very effective, Dugong doesn't have much in offensive pressure, and depending on how many special attack boosts I get off of Charge Beam, this should be in the bag, as Ampharos is currently holding the choice specs that I got from the Lake of Rage. 2 of them brings him to red HP as Aurora Beam lands for minimal damage, forcing him to go to rest, but thanks to those special attack boosts, 2 more Charge Beams from here are enough to win out and hand me the Glacier Badge. Now then, what about Jasmine? Well, she's just as easy as Chuck, actually. Ampharos is able to just walk in here and blast all 3 of her Pokemon with quad-effective Thunderbolts, taking out both Magnemites and Steelix to win the fight without a single attack coming from her. I think the inverse typing stuff is really starting to click with me. It's really odd building teams for these fights because of it, and I have to consistently check the type chart to make sure that I'm not screwing something up, but it seems to be working out just fine by this point. Now then, Goldenrod Radio Tower time. Again, I don't think any of the Rocket Executives are necessarily major fights, especially when Petrel uses 5 coughing and a wheezing. It's just nonsense. However, there is a rival fight here wedged around the halfway point of this whole ordeal, and I respect Pooh enough to give him his own segment. It's called the Don't Poo on Your Employees segment. Seriously though, I'm not sure how much of my audience watches wrestling, but I'm writing this script as the newest lawsuit came out regarding Vince McMahon and alleged sex trafficking that occurred in the WWE, and it's just absolutely appalling, but totally expected at the same time. Vince McMahon is a whack job and literally no different from his on-screen character if previous stories about him are to be believed. So all of the batshit insane nonsense that came out in that 67-page court document is both deplorable and, again, completely expected. But good riddance, may we never have to utter his name ever again as wrestling fans. Insanity aside, Pooh leads off with Golbat, I go with Crobat, and immediately strike with a quad-effective Leech Life, doing nearly half damage, but remembering, oh yeah, this is a 20 power move in this generation, before getting hit with Confuse Ray, subsequently swapping out into Furo to take an Air Cutter for about a third before delivering a Fly for the KO, leading to Haunter. Facade's able to take care of that with a super effective stab physical damage by outspeeding, with Quilava entering third. I bring back out Crobat in the face of a Flame Wheel for such minimal damage, all of which I'm able to recover off of 2 Leech Lives as he wastes 2 turns with Smokescreen, not inhibiting my attacks at all as I swap back out into Furo, taking a Flame Wheel for a bit less than a third before another Fly should up and take him out. But of course, we missed the 95% accurate move, despite having not missed with Leech Life because of the 2 Smokescreens. God, I love Fly, but it does knock me into the red from another Flame Wheel. All good, I just gotta go back into Crobat and deliver a wing attack for the third KO of the match, with Sneasel coming forth and falling to 2 wing attacks, all while landing a pretty decent feint attack. I always forget this thing actually packs a punch in this generation. I'm very used to it just being utterly terrible in Gold, Silver, Crystal. Last out is Magnemite, and sure enough, quad-effective wing attack does put it into the ground along with the rest of Pooh's team, winning me the fight and letting me continue to rampage through Team Rocket, eventually culminating in a dominant victory against Archer, not taking a single point of damage before sweeping his team with Kadabra. Now then, on to Route 44 through Ice Path and into Blackthorn City for our last gym battle against Clair. She leads Gyarados, I lead with Ampharos, and while you might think I blanked on the whole point of this challenge, instead I'm using this time to set up a Thunder Wave as Gyarados delivers a Dragon Rage for a little under a third. This, therefore, is probably going to bait that again, so that gets me into Quagsire next turn, take that Dragon Rage, and avoid the potential of any other attacks as Earthquake one-shots, KOing Gyarados and leading to Dragonair. Now, unfortunately, this ends up outspeeding Quagsire, delivering a Fire Blast that brings him into the red, but Waterfall is able to follow up with a quick one-shot, leading to Kingdra. Now, I wish I could stay in here and hit another quad-effective Waterfall, but Hydro Pump, or basically any move for that matter, cooks me at this point, so I swap into Eradicate to attempt to take one of those power points away, instead being hit with Dragon Pulse before swapping into Crobat, who thankfully dodges the incoming Hydro Pump, giving me free reign to go for Poison Fang, managing to get the poison all while the second Hydro Pump misses as well. Perfect. Now I can just send in a barrage of wing attacks until she manages to either hit a Hydro Pump to take this thing down to low HP, though she doesn't even end up doing that. Instead, following the first wing attack, I see Smokescreen. Then upon connecting with the second wing attack, I see Hyper Beam, only managing to do a hint over half to Crobat while I take Kingdra down into the red with wing attack. But because this turn potentially could be a healing turn if I don't KO, due to that charging turn overriding it, I just need to attack instead of swapping, and sure enough, even at -1 accuracy, I do manage to connect with the third and final wing attack, KOing Kingdra, with Dragonair number 2 being all that remains. This is a pretty simple swap into Ampharos at this point, though I didn't expect her to go immediately for Thunder Wave, so I've got to take a Dragon Pulse to deliver a Thunderbolt afterwards, or I would if it wasn't for being fully paralyzed. Thankfully, we have enough HP to take a second, and I don't really care if Ampharos dies to a critical hit at this point, so I just stay in and we go unpunished, KOing after the second Dragon Pulse with Thunderbolt to clean up the fight and receive the Rising Badge after our Dragon's Den trial. Speaking of which, there's a nice little Pokemon in here that I'd like to grab along with some other encounters, so let's go on another catching spree. Alright, so we've got quite a few encounters to grab to complete our collection for the Johto region, those being Poliwag in Blackthorn City, the Gift Dratini with Extreme Speed in the Dragon's Den, Shuckle from Cianwood City, and while I was looking for my encounter on Route 47, I discovered something that I had no idea you could do in HGSS. Turns out, if you do a frame-perfect input when you're about to go down a waterfall, you can actually face left or right while going down said waterfall. Does it do anything? No. Is it funny? Yeah, kinda. Even the highest quality generations of Pokemon have glitches, even if they are very minor like this one. And I mean the Gen 4 engine in general, I do not mean Johto. Don't get it twisted, I still think the structure of the Johto region is bad. Anyway, we got Miltank on Route 47, Gloom on Route 48, Tauros in the Safari Zone, Phanpy on Route 45, Lickitung on Route 44, Swinub in Ice Path, Krabby on Route 40, Mantine on Route 41, Horsey from the Whirl Islands, Onix from Cliff Cave, and finally Ho-Oh from the Bell Tower, which I won't be using since I don't want to use legendaries that are just gimmies. Even if I had caught Entei earlier, I probably would have just boxed it and called it a funny stroke of luck. Now then, onto the Kanto side. I've got Tentacool from Route 27, Slowpoke from Tojo Falls, Doduo from Route 28, and finally Rhyhorn from Victory Road. I'm not sure if any of these guys are going to be added to the team in the future, but if they are, I'll tell you what EV spreads they'll have since I'm sure 80% of these animals are not going to get used a single time. But with them in hand, we're one rival battle away from the Elite Four, with Pooh leading Sneasel and myself leading Gyarados. I'm basically just hoping to Dragon Dance him out of the game, which seems to be working pretty effectively considering the Intimidate helped to nullify the damage output of Feint Attack. And due to my speed increases, Sneasel is now prioritizing the special Icy Wind, barely doing any damage, all while I max out the thing I actually care about in attack. After 5 of these, I'm also already up to +2 speed as he decided to shift back to Feint Attack on the 5th Dragon Dance. So I figured I'm probably fast enough to take everything else out on this team. So I hit Sneasel with Waterfall, Typhlosion with Ice Fang, then Magneton, Kadabra, Haunter, and finally Golbat with one single Waterfall apiece to win the battle with the classic, clean 1 vs 6 full-on sweep. But with the Elite Four ahead, I've got to strategically team build. Unsurprisingly, I'm bringing in staples of the team with Alakazam, Crobat, Gengar, and Gyarados, but newcomers to the scene are Golem, which we haven't used the final evolution yet, though I did use Geodude way earlier in this challenge, as well as Vileplume, being trained in HP and attack since I have access to Bullet Seed, Moonlight, Swords Dance, and Drain Punch. So why the heck not? My special attack IV on this thing is 1, and for some reason, I'm enjoying the idea of just utterly perplexing the AI as it attempts to understand why I would make such a stupid decision when it comes to a physical Vileplume. Either way though, this is the team. Do you think I can win the league without any deaths, or will I end up running into a brick wall with my choices? Leave a comment with your prediction, and let's find out. Starting off with Will, unsurprisingly, Alakazam basically murders this entire team, hitting Psychic on Xatu, Jinx, Executor, Slowbro, and finally Xatu number 2 to one-shot all 5 of them in sequence to win. But that's just the beginning. Second up is Koga, and he's not even that much more difficult, as Gengar is able to use the Sludge Bomb TM that I got from Route 43, combined with the choice specs to just one-shot Ariados, Forretress, Crobat, Venomoth, and Ariados number 2 all to win. Those choice specs are really coming in handy to ensure that these are one-shots though, and it kind of beats doing the whole setup nonsense since that takes so long and I kind of get bored looking at the screen doing it. Third up is Bruno, and yeah, he's also a sweep with the choice specs, using Gengar's Dark Pulse to take out Hitmontop, Hitmonlee, Machamp, Hitmonchan, and Onix all in one shot to win. I did not expect the Elite Four to fall like dominoes, but I guess I'll take it. I think Karen's going to be a little bit more difficult though, but we'll navigate it as we go. She leads off with Umbreon, I lead Gengar and take it out in one shot with a Choice Specs boosted Shadow Ball leading to Vileplume. Now, I don't think a neutral Shadow Ball here is going to take out Vileplume, but I could at least swap into Gyarados and blast it with Waterfall for super effective damage, thankfully dodging a Stun Spore on switch in, which makes my life easier. Third out is Houndoom, so it's out to Gengar again as he sets up Nasty Plot, then back to the Choice Specs boosted Shadow Balls as it takes out Houndoom, but thanks to Gengar coming out next, I just opt to swap into Golem since I'm expecting a Focus Blast here. But once again, I dodge on switch in, allowing for a critical super effective headbutt to take her down, leaving just Murkrow. Well, I guess there's no reason to swap due to Golem's high defense, so I take a super effective Pluck for around a quarter before Earthquake puts the bird into a coffin for days to come, giving you the win and leaving just Lance. Now, I am kinda worried about Lance. I'm not sure how well this is gonna go, especially since I don't have that much of a backup plan when it comes to this fight. I'm basically just hoping Intimidate and Rest is gonna do it. Oh well, let's just see how it goes. In case the plan falls apart, I'm just swapping back and forth with Golem since it's taking barely any damage from Waterfall, while I swap back into Gyarados every turn to take Dragon Pulse, which is doing a little bit of damage, but I do have enough time to get it down to -6 before using Rest to fully heal. But man, Waterfall is still doing less than a quarter at -6, that's crazy. I'm basically in the position of waiting for him to run out of power points or critting and kinda screwing me up, but I'm able to use Rest and a single Dragon Dance on a rotation until he runs out of those power points, and he does, meaning it's game over. I'm able to use my Dragon Dances as he's stuck using Flail at 100% HP, only doing like 3 to 4 damage every time. Sure, he has Ice Fang, but that's neutral and not doing much, and Dragon Pulse is terrible with Gyarados' pitiful special attack stat. So after using one more rest to put Gyarados at as high of HP as possible before the rest of the team, she finally wakes up and hits Waterfall on Gyarados, Earthquake on Charizard, then Waterfall on all 3 Dragonites in a row before his last Pokemon, Aerodactyl, enters, letting me neutral Earthquake it at +6 to take him down, ending the fight and giving me a deathless League victory. Now if only that damn Growlithe didn't die to the red Gyarados, I'd have a pretty good shot here of pulling off a deathless run. With the Johto region handled though, all we have left are the Kanto leaders in red, and seeing as the level cap for the entirety of Kanto is set at Blue's cap, since if it wasn't, we'd have to go with Pokemon lower level than the Elite Four, I think it makes sense to just blitz through them and talk about Blue and Red in detail. First up, Surge is an annoying fuck with his stupid trash can puzzle. I will literally never do this without save states ever again, because if I did, I'd rather have to staple my ball sack to the ceiling. Either way, this whole fight is a choice spec sweep with Gengar and Thunderbolt, taking out Raichu, Electrode, Magneton, Electrode number 2, and finally Electabuzz to win. Second in line is Erica, whose grass types are pretty effectively handled by Gyarados, setting up 2 Dragon Dances against Jumpluff, who sets up Sunny Day and Leech Seed. So yeah, I guess so much for those Dragon Dances, but hey, at least Waterfall is still able to take out Jumpluff, Victory Bell, and nearly Blossom, but we got the flinch, so who cares, it dies anyway, and finally Tangela to win. Third up, Sabrina is just as easy as Will was thanks to Alakazam, blasting Espeon, Mr. Mime, and Alakazam all with 1 Psychic apiece to get my 11th badge. But before I grabbed my 12th, I stopped on Route 17 to grab myself a Slugma to at least have a fire type in the bank just in case I need it. Probably won't though. Anyway, Janina is 4th on the Kanto docket and she's handled by Gengar, Sludge Bombing Crobat, Weezing, Ariados, Ariados number 2, and Venomoth all in one shot. Halfway done with Kanto, but I need to take care of that machine part and get the Pokeflute upgrade to the radio card first. Which is always annoying, but hey, at least it gave me an excuse to grab an Electabuzz on Route 10, just in case they need a 3rd electric type outside of Ampharos and Magneton. Again, probably won't though. With that taken care of, I can chase Misty back to her gym and take her on, leading Gyarados and setting up a few Dragon Dances before hitting Golduck with Waterfall, and then I realize I'm dumb and forget that Quagsire has Water Absorb. Thankfully, she's also stupid and goes for Amnesia instead of anything useful for 2 turns, so I can just Earthquake her into healing range, then hit 2 more to KO, leaving just Lapras and Starmie to both fall to 1 Waterfall apiece. 5 down, 3 to go, so it's off to Lavender Town to grab the Pokeflute radio card so I can access Pewter City through Diglett's Cave, grabbing the Snorlax on Route 11 as my encounter along with the Leftovers item. That will be intensely useful against Red, seeing as the Hail is going to do constant damage, and any way of being able to negate that is super convenient. I also figured I'd grab Diglett while in the area, but I probably won't use it. As for Brock, I just used Gengar's Thunderbolt for his lead Graveler, but thanks to those pesky Amistar and Kabutops being water types and Gengar being locked in thanks to choice specs, I opt to swap into Crobat to 2-shot Amistar with Cross Poison, only taking a single Brine for about a third before Kabutops comes in. I swap into Gyarados here expecting the Giga Drain that would normally be quad effective inversely on Crobat, and there's no way it survives that at this point. Aqua Jet does a hair under a third following that both times it connects, bringing Gyarados to 73 HP, but 2 Waterfalls returns the fossil to its previous state, leaving just Rhyhorn and Onix to be obliterated by a returning Gengar and Thunderbolt to net me my 6th gym win of Kanto. Second to last, of course, is Blaine, and fire types are a little bit of a problem for me at this point. However, I can shuffle around my team here by swapping out Gyarados and Raticate for Butterfree and Victory Bell, as they should be able to provide some really nice physical and special damage for the inversely super effective types here. Blaine leads off with Magcargo, I go with Victory Bell, and the turn of Sunny Day allows me to set up Swords Dance, but I want a few more, so I outspeed next turn thanks to Chlorophyll to put it to sleep with Sleep Powder. Then set up 1 more Swords Dance as he immediately wakes up and hits Rock Slide. Alright, you stupid rock slug thing that should theoretically burn through the ground below you. Take another sleep powder and let me finish my setup. Thank you. Return blasts Macargo off into space. He crashes into the moon and he goes through the moon. He ends up in space and dies. It's true, that happened. Game Freak's just too lazy to animate it. The rest of the team is easy enough to handle with Leaf Blade, as Magmar falls to it, as does Rapidash following a weak bounce, leaving just Blue and Red to contend with. For Blue, though, I decided to reshuffle my team once again, this time swapping out Butterfree and my Water HM user Seaking so that I could draft in Dratini, evolving into Dragonite, as well as Snorlax, with the former being EV trained in attack and speed, while Snorlax is in attack and HP. But with the 6 of them at level 60, it's time for Blue. As he's leading Executor, I lead Alakazam and set up Calm Mind as he goes for Leaf Storm, doing a bit over half but harshly lowering his special attack in the process. Well, this should be a cut and dry case then with Calm Mind special defense buffs, as I can just recover most of that HP back, all while Psychic, of course, does half and lowers my special defense again. You know what, screw you, I'm going for a second Calm Mind and that buff will surely keep me alive. And actually, thankfully it does, allowing Alakazam to live on just 14 HP as I get buffed to +2, giving me more than enough firepower to recover, dodge a Leaf Storm, and then realize that, well, if I'm gonna dodge that, then of course I'm gonna overkill with Calm Mind. Which is probably the best thing for me to do at this point, considering Executor also sets up Trick Room next turn, and I don't want Alakazam having to take pot shots on every Pokemon for the rest of this fight. So I'll just have to let that elapse, all while setting up my Calm Minds and recovering whenever necessary. However, Hypnosis does put a damper on things, especially when it keeps landing over and over again for a 60% accurate move. Of course, Alakazam does wake up the turn Trick Room ends and I'm using Calm Mind again, so I have to sit through a second one of these, all while still being blasted by repeat Psychics. But Recover helps keep me alive, and Calm Mind of course keeps up my special defense. Using Recover on the turn that Trick Room ends so that I can finally start whittling away at Blue's team. Taking out Executor with Psychic, Machamp with Shadow Ball, Arcanine, Rhydon, and Gyarados all with 1 Psychic apiece, and finally Pidgeot with a super effective Shadow Ball to win the fight single-handedly, with Blue giving me the Earth Badge, Oak handing me the HM for Rock Climb, and finally giving me access to Red. I think this team is perfectly acceptable for this fight though, so after bringing them to level 80 to match Red's lowest level Pokemon for an added challenge, since there's no reason to bring them to level 88 to match a Pikachu of all things, it's time. Can we pull it off, or am I gonna accidentally get slaughtered? Well, let's find out. Red leads off with Pikachu, myself with Gyarados, and of course in the face of Iron Tail, we're doing those same Intimidate strats that I did with Lance again, alternating back and forth with Snorlax since it can just soak up damage like a sponge, all while I eliminate this Pikachu's ability to connect for any real damage outside of Thunderbolt, being a quad-resisted Volt Tackle every time I bring Gyarados back in, only to bait Iron Tail for Snorlax. Though that keeps missing because 75% accuracy is a joke. Honestly, I'm surprised they haven't buffed this move to be like 85% to be more like a Steel-type Fire Blast or Hydro Pump. Regardless, once all 6 Intimidates are up, Pikachu's worse for wear due to the hail, though this is all a ploy to get Red to waste a healing item on Pikachu and give Gyarados a free turn of setup without taking damage. Once we've got Pikachu to -6 though, I can use Rest to fully heal, but of course Iron Tail connects and lowers Gyarados' defense immediately. Which is going to put me in a little bit of a tight spot if I want to continue with my Dragon Dance plans. Thankfully, the second attempt misses and I can continue setting up, but of course the third Iron Tail also gets a defense drop, forcing me to just start attacking otherwise, only at +2, otherwise I will be screwed here and not be able to do anything. Waterfall takes out Pikachu, putting me up 6-5 as Blastoise enters second, which is odd, but I suppose he wants to KO me with a water move, though Blastoise is slower than Gyarados, allowing for a 6-4 lead with Waterfall. Third out is Lapras, once again trying to hit Gyarados with a water move, but this Lapras doesn't have Water Absorb, so I'm safe to hit another Waterfall to bring this fight 6-3 as Charizard enters, taking a +2 Earthquake that only does a little over half damage as Flare Blitz takes out Gyarados. Oh, of course my only meaningful death is in the last fight of the game. That tends to happen pretty frequently. Either way, I'm able to bring in Victory Bell on a healing turn due to the Flare Blitz recoil, setting up Swords Dance before taking a Dragon Pulse for over half, but Leaf Blade's able to get the quad effective KO here on Charizard, putting me up 5-2 as Venusaur enters, going down much the same way to a quad effective Leaf Blade, leaving just Snorlax. Now this guy's a bastard, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna lose Victory Bell here, but I want to get as much damage on Snorlax as I can beforehand, using Leaf Blade to nearly KO Snorlax. Even with the hail, it's just like a very small speck. But it's not quite enough as Snorlax KOs Victory Bell, making me bring in Gengar on the full restore turn so that I can use Shadow Ball. God, why did I click Sludge Bomb? Oh, that totally f***ed me up now, as now I can't KO Snorlax with Shadow Ball following that. Thankfully, Snorlax is dumb though and goes for Blizzard, doing a little less than half as a fourth and final full restore comes through following my Shadow Ball, leaving it susceptible to 2 more of them in a row without a chance for Snorlax to attack, letting Gengar pick up the last KO and victory of the run. Well now, that was a fun time actually. Messing with the inverse type matchups definitely had its ups and downs, but still proves that with those being reversed, that Pokemon like Gyarados, Gengar, and Alakazam are still completely and ridiculously overpowered, and can blast through just about anything with their line of stab and coverage moves. I can't say I'm surprised, but maybe one of the other games in the franchise can provide a more difficult experience with inverse typings. Perhaps maybe Black and White with its only Gen 5 Pokemon pool, or perhaps going back to Gen 3 with either Emerald or Fire Red Leaf Green. Let me know in the comments which game you'd like me to tackle with inverse type matchups next if you enjoyed this video, and make sure to like it and subscribe if you haven't already. We're so close to 200,000, and while we didn't quite hit it in December, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to make it by the end of February. But with that, huge thanks once again to BetterHelp for sponsoring the video. Do take a look at the description or in the pinned comment to check them out, since it both really helps the channel and it could potentially help you improve your own self. And that's never a bad thing. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.